Welcome to How to Beat the Difference with your hosts, Johanna and Paul. A podcast for the career you want, or maybe just that push you need. If you want to know what your dream career looks like, join us to get inspiration from industry experts that will make that dream career a reality.
Welcome to How to Be a Difference with your hosts, Johanna Molina and
Paul Lynskey. That's me.
That's you, Paul. How are you today?
I am good. We're gearing up for the holidays, and it's dark all the time in Ireland, but I've got high spirits because it's nearly holiday time.
Exactly. It's a very happy time and very busy as well. Gatherings with friends, with family, and we have also a very special next couple of episodes for everyone here where we are going to be presenting you with the best parts of our podcast so far with some of our best guests. But before we jump into that, Paul, what about Christmas music? I know you have a bit of a trauma with Christmas music. What is it?
We spoke about this just before we jumped on, and I said, I hate Christmas music. Like I really dislike it because I'll explain why. It's because I work when I was 18 or 19. I worked in a department store, like a grocery store, and they only had 8 songs, and they had them on repeat every day over Christmas. And I felt like I was losing my mind, and I despised Christmas music because of that. And then like everybody complained so much because they said it was a form of torture that they added in more songs to the playlist, and then everybody was a little bit happier. But that was a long time ago, but it stuck me to this day, Johanna.
Oh gosh. Well, on the flip side, I do love Christmas music. In fact, sometimes it can be in the middle of the summer and I play 1 or 2 songs.
Oh my God.
To cheer myself up.
Okay, right. With that crazy news from both of us, we'll move on to our best of the season, the year. Our best of podcast. We've got 6 guests today, and we're going to play some clips from those podcasts, and then we've got another episode coming up over the holiday time, and that's going to do another 6. So introduce our first guest, please, Johanna.
Yes, absolutely. Jane Asher is our first guest today. She was in episode 2. She's the founding partner and CEO of 23 Red, which is a creative agency in the UK. We're going to hear about her. She gave us really, really great advice for treating people kindly. She also shares some things, which is interesting. I actually shared this with her. She adopts the nationality depending on which team is winning in sports, which is very convenient. And also she shared with us some lessons about internships and learning actually how to work in different environments. So let's hear what she's got to say to us today. Jane, and so what was the moment when you felt that this career was for you, this career in marketing?
Probably when I was in my final year of university, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I started to look at careers through my university careers advice service, but also, and I guess most importantly, talking to people who were a couple of years older than me and finding out more about their careers. I didn't have the benefit of work experience, unfortunately, in this industry sector. However, looking back on it, one of the key things about a career in advertising and marketing is about being really interested in what makes people tick. And if I think about some of the summer jobs that I'd had as a student, so for example, working in a cake factory, you might sort of say, well, how on earth does working in a cake factory line you up for a career in advertising? But actually spending time on the production line with people and the kinds of conversations we had and the TV programs that they were watching and the ads they liked, and that real sort of curiosity and really learning about what made people tick made me realize that actually a career in marketing and advertising was one for me.
Fabulous. And what are some of the common myths or misconceptions about marketing?
Well, certainly about careers in marketing. One of the myths is that you need a degree in marketing. or advertising or communications. And nothing could be further from the truth, actually. We're looking for people who have taken very, very wide-ranging degrees, and indeed those people who haven't taken degrees too. But what we're interested in is curiosity, collaboration, people's ability to understand and assimilate information quickly and to make creative leaps. Those are the kinds of skills that we're looking for. So yeah, one of the big myths is you need a degree in marketing and business. You certainly don't.
And what has been the 2 or 3 best piece of advice that you've been given?
The first bit of advice I was given by somebody who is extremely well known in the industry, former chairman of Boots in the UK, was there's no such thing as a wrong turn. Remember, there's no such thing as a wrong turn. And what she meant by that was that sometimes people look and sort of say, well, maybe I made the wrong career choice, or took the wrong promotion, or moved at the wrong time. And her advice always to me, because I had one of those sort of moves in my career, was there is no such thing as a wrong turn. It is what you make of it. And that's something that I think has held me into very good stead, which is always thinking about what's got me to where I am now and how I can apply that to move me on to the next step, rather than looking backwards and thinking that I'd made a bad career choice. The second piece of advice that I guess I've had is from another one of my mentors, actually, who is now in the House of Lords in the UK, but formerly she ran an advertising agency called AMV BDDO. And I think her advice was always to treat people with real kindness and respect. And you, wherever you are in your career stages, and I think that's held me in also in very good stead. The people you, it's an old adage, isn't it? But you're kind to the people throughout your business, and that will definitely hold you in very good stead. So yeah, good bit of advice there. I think kindness and respect to all.
Fantastic. What would you say to all the women that are out there listening and admiring your career?
You can have it all, but it's all about achieving a work-life blend. So and accepting that you're not necessarily going to be perfect at everything at every point. I have had 3 children, set up and run my own business, and I've managed to have that blend. And I learned the hard way, I think, with my first child, that I didn't get to spend too much time with her when she was very, very little. That was because I had a chairman who wasn't very supportive of women in business. But since I set my own agency up, and with my other children, I have definitely managed to have really good quality time with my kids, and also grow and develop 2 businesses, in fact. And I always talk to people about the fact that I've got 5 children, 3 of my own and 2 which have been the businesses that I've set up and run.
Amazing. How do you think an internship will help people in their career?
Well, internship helps, I think, at a number of different levels. Obviously, the ability to work in a I'm going to use the word office environment. I'm very mindful that many of us are not working in offices at the moment, but in a working environment. And you learn all about, the ability to collaborate and team working and communication skills. So there is those kinds of skills you learn in work experience, which will hold you in good stead, whichever route you go. And then, of course, there are the professional skills that you pick up, and the experiences that you pick up through work experience too. So if you're fortunate enough to get work experience in the marketing industry or the advertising industry, then clearly that will give you exposure to some of the principles around brand and marketing strategy development and campaigns. So yeah, 2 benefits really: your interpersonal skills, but also the professional experience and expertise.
Next up, we have Eric Stettler. He is Chief Economist at TopTal. And this was from episode 3 of How to Be the Difference. He's a data scientist, a venture capitalist, and a very, very kind of smart guy. That's what I would say. That's my input there, Johanna.
He's very smart and he's a very good friend, so I love him very much.
I know, and then we'll get on to shortly all your Catalina friends. We'll come on to them shortly. But let's jump into Eric Stettler.
And what does a career in data science look like? Do you think it's for everyone, or do you need to have something special, specific to pursue it?
Well, there's so many things I would want to say about what does a career in data science entail. I would say fundamentally, the most valuable commodity in the world is information. And your job as a data scientist is to convert data to information. And keeping in mind that data is not the same as information. I think that we make that mistake a lot. You hear people say data is the new whatever, the new oil. And that's actually a very interesting example that people use, or metaphor that people use, because oil by itself is often useless. You have to refine it. You have to do things to it to actually be able to use it in any real capacity. Likewise, there's a tremendous amount of data that is currently going unused. And that includes data that might hold, for example, I saw an interesting video by The Economist recently saying that only 5% of the medical data in the world is being actively used for analysis. So this data could hold secrets on how to cure some of the worst diseases in the world and things like that. So your job as a data scientist, above all, is you receive the raw data, but then you turn that into actionable insights that companies or other organizations can use in order to make decisions. In terms of your personality or your profile, I think you asked about, I would say no, there is no single profile for it. I think that the media, as with many things involving data science and artificial intelligence, has presented a very specific and often misleading image of it. I would say you do not need to be a numbers person. I don't sit around doing equations all day. I have my computer to do the math part for me. My job is to think creatively in terms of what types of variables would be affecting something and how. And it involves a tremendous amount of creative problem solving. So I would say above all, you need to be someone who loves creative problem solving, who loves solving mysteries. I always joke that each new data set is like a murder mystery novel. You know that there's something in there. And the question is, yeah, seriously.
I like that.
Yeah. And there's something there, like beneath the surface of all that data, there's some solution you can find to a serious problem. And that's what makes it so cool. So I would say to anyone that is interested overall, do not accept any kind of external messages, whether it's from the media, whether it's from people you know, that you are not cut out for it, so to speak. The math follows. That, frankly, is not the hard part. The hard part is the creativity and the mindset.
That's fantastic. How do you break into data science?
So how would one break into data science? I would say above all, you should start learning some of the tools that get used in terms of, for example, some of the coding languages. So for example, Python, like the snake, and R, the letter, are two of the most widely used languages for any large data set. Sometimes you can frankly just use Excel, but for any large data set, you tend to want something a bit more powerful. And R is more, just to give a quick comparison between the two, R is more, I would say, cutting edge in terms of it's more open source. It tends to be really on the bleeding edge of whatever tools are being used in data science. But as a result of that, it can also be a little less elegant and user-friendly to implement, whereas Python is extremely powerful. It's like driving a very powerful car in automatic transmission. You just need to focus on driving, and the car and the engine do the work for you. So I would, for one thing, recommend that people start learning those languages. And again, do not be intimidated by them. It's always a bit of a challenge at the beginning when you learn any new skill, but you would be surprised how quickly you can begin doing functional programming with both. There are many free, wonderful resources online. For example, Code Academy, which has free classes in both, and then many other resources that may not be completely free, but very reasonably priced. So I would say make the commitment to learning, to spending a few minutes a day, even if it's literally a few minutes every day, to studying those tools, and think of it as going to the gym, but for your mind, and you will reap the benefits for the rest of your life. In terms of the data side, so now speaking just in terms of how do you think about using data, I would say there are many wonderful books to start reading. The Signal and the Noise is a great one, and that discusses very real world examples of how to implement data science and the pitfalls, which we should also talk about, because as with any powerful tool, it can be very dangerous when used improperly. So there are books like that. And then I would say similar there to the part about learning the proper tools in terms of coding languages, many online resources that discuss the foundational assumptions and approaches of the key models that you would use. So things like Khan Academy, things on, YouTube has such a wealth of instructional videos, really make use of the fact that the internet has opened up this realm of knowledge to you, and approach it as something fun, something engaging. Watch the videos and simply tell yourself each day, I'm going to learn a new tool and technique, and then start actually doing a project once you feel ready, because actually doing something is, of course, the best way to learn. That's what I'm so grateful for with my prior career that I mentioned in New York. I was not doing theoretical data science. My job was, if there's a crisis in the global markets, figure out what is really happening in terms of the deeper analytics of what the markets are doing. So that forced creative thinking, and it forced learning as I went, because there was no other option, basically. So the project could literally be, if you love gardening, for example, I love plants, build a database of the plants you have and what you've been doing with them and how they're doing and everything, and start analyzing for like just anything, like something that's fun and engaging for you. If you love finance and you have stocks, then start downloading some of the price information from Yahoo Finance or Google and start analyzing the stock returns more. Something that will engage you, that allows you to start implementing the tools as you go.
How can you use data inappropriately, or what is actually that part of data science that you probably hate? You just spoke about what you love and what's the fun part, but what is that dark side of data science?
Yeah, so this is a very important topic, which gets not nearly enough attention in the media, and this is the real danger of artificial intelligence and related fields, rather than what we tend to think when we think of those terms. The other side of the coin of the fact that we have so much data available to us and such powerful tools to use it is you can prove anything. So if you told me, prove that, and I'm not going to say it out loud, but like, let's assume something that all of us would find very offensive or contrary to our values, and you told me, prove this, you could go out and find the data and prove it, because there's just so much available to you and so many tools to use. So you can find a way to arrive at any assumption. Now, the example I just used sounded a bit more nefarious, but what really happens, the real danger, is you accidentally think you've proven something without having properly thought it through, because the ability is there, the tools and the data are there to arrive at so many different conclusions. And as a result, I think, for example, whenever I talk to a young data scientist, like someone who just graduated university and they're just starting their first job, if I ask them, for example, like, how would you test this thing? Like, for example, the implications of climate change on this kind of agricultural ecosystem or something. How would you approach that? I tend to get a list of very powerful algorithms that they would use and other very powerful tools they would use. But the danger of that is they need to know under what circumstances do you really use this tool? When do you use a chainsaw? I mean, don't use it if you don't have to, and be very careful, like be very aware of how to properly use it if you do use it. The same goes with the powerful algorithms we use. You've seen, for example, in the news, some real disturbing stories about how biases in hiring or other things have been accidentally encoded into AI, because companies take all the data, they run it through the algorithms, and then they start predicting who the right candidates are. But if the hiring process itself was imperfect and maybe subject to unconscious bias, in which, for example, minorities may have had less of an opportunity to work there, you accidentally end up encoding that, literally, in the code that decides who gets the interview and who doesn't. So I would say, I think data scientists should almost have to take the same kind of Hippocratic oath that doctors do of do no harm. Like, you really need to think, like, very serious decisions will get made based on your analyses. So one, never use a tool if you can't, never use a particular algorithm or other type of tool if you can't answer the question of under what circumstances do you use this and not use it, and what are the key assumptions underlying it, and are you confident that those hold in this situation? And also realizing that we are so awash in data that you have to be very conscientious of what data you're using, why, is it the proper sample to use, or you will end up finding what we call spurious correlation, meaning not real, but just if you look on paper, it looks like a correlation that leads you down some extremely wrong and sometimes extremely dangerous angles. But to end on a slightly more positive note, I would say this is part of what makes it so interesting as a career is you are searching for truth in many ways amidst the numbers, and you have this this responsibility to yourself and to your employer and frankly to the world to harness it in a very responsible and thoughtful way so that we don't end up doing things that are based on wrong assumptions or encoding things that should not be encoded into the way the world works.
And our next guest is Catalina Escobar. She's the president of Juanfe Foundation, a really, really beautiful foundation that helps teenage moms actually breaking cycles of poverty. She's going to tell us about her backstory of the foundation and what is it like to be in the NGO sector. She's also one of my closest friends, and hero.
And just a little something else as well. I always make fun of Johanna because it feels like all of her friends are called Catalina. And I was just wondering, do you ever make a group with just Catalinas? Like a WhatsApp group?
3 of my best friends are Catalinas, and that's beautiful. I just love that name so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's popular in Colombia as well.
No, it's the law. You have to name one of your children Catalina, and then we'll jump into the next episode.
How did you choose an NGO as your career? And tell us a little bit about the backstory of La Juanfe.
Well, as many of great NGOs, mainly they start like I did with either painful stories or circumstances or things like that, or because there's somebody who really makes or stops and starts taking actions from things that person sees like extreme poverty or something that makes you really feel compassionate towards other people. And that's the way I started. I lived in Cartagena for about 2.5 years. I had a little baby called Guillermo. He's now 24. And when you go to Cartagena, that by the way, Cartagena is located in the northern Caribbean part of Colombia and is the city with the greatest social despair in this country. So you see very, beautiful, very high buildings like in Miami, but in 5 minutes or 5 minutes away, you're in the middle of like clearly Somalia or any poor country. I started engaging. My second son, Juan Felipe or Juanfe, was born there. And since minute one, I started engaging in a public hospital where half of population are born there. It's a very, very poor hospital. So I just started clearly like any other human being as a volunteer. But I didn't know that I was starting to write a story of a wonderful little baby that invited her mom to take a trip. So in that hospital, I stayed for I was working with an American firm. So I was a volunteer every Tuesday and every Friday, every Tuesday and every Thursday from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. I was there and I loved it. And I actually fell in love with these people. So the story started there. And what I didn't know was that I was starting to write a book of compassion for the world and falling in love with the people. So I witnessed how a little baby died because a teen mother failed to raise $30 or $20 to pay for her baby's treatment. And that baby died with me. And 5 days later, my little Juanfe fell from an 8th floor balcony and he left us in this world. So that's the sad story. But the beautiful story is that he actually asked me, Mom, I'm going to be taking a trip. Do you want to come with me? And I accepted. And the trip was actually digging into people's hearts and misery in order to understand and fall in love with them so we can make a social transformation in their lives. So my career actually started from my heart, but with my structure. I majored in business. I had a minor in economics and did an MBA. And I needed also to prove that I would run a non-for-profit like business and like a social sector. And that means that you need to also measure impact. That means that also you have to be a leader and you also have to raise your arguments. Since day one, we wanted to actually engage into the nonprofit sector, measuring impact. And we did it since day one. And I will tell you, Cartagena used to have the highest infant mortality rate in Colombia and the third in Latin America. I won't take much time to explain how we did it, but we basically focused on the problem, and it was the neonatal deaths. 85% of the deaths of children were in the first month of being alive, these babies, which is called neonatal deaths. And we created an intensive care unit for babies in a very, very short time. In the meantime, nobody would believe in this crazy woman because people thought that I was, trying to make my son survive within and I believed it too. But nobody knew that I was very, very serious about this. And poverty, you need to take it very serious. So we lowered the total infant mortality rate within 8 years by 81%, with no public policy whatsoever. In the meantime, we wanted to go to the root cause, and the root cause was teen pregnancy. We saved the lives of more than 4,600 little babies. We worked with about 22,000 children that were in extreme malnutrition, saving their lives. We've been working with more than 210,000 patients of a city of 1 million people without any money from government, and teen mothers. So our impact after 20 years has been more than almost 280,000 people. So teen mothers, it's like my very best passion. Teen pregnancy is what actually perpetuates poverty in developing nations. Is the beginning of poverty. And these girls, when they get pregnant, before the age of 20, they already have 3 kids. And it's completely unsustainable for our countries, number one. And number two, is not fair for these girls. Because we cannot think as having babies as their unique, the unique dream. Juanfe breaks cycles of poverty. It is actually an economic model. We're stopping poverty and generating local GDP. That's what makes me a social entrepreneur. And every single day of my life, I have to open new roads, new spaces. And that's what I do every day and every night. But also, you also have to decide if you want to become a leader. And when you become a leader is when you bring these girls' voices out there in the world. And that's what I do, basically.
But going back into the career field of NGOs, for someone that is out there listening and wanting to be part of this, how can someone break into and actually succeed in a career in NGO? What is it like as a career?
Being in a nonprofit sector, you need to understand that you belong to a sector. It's like the financial area. It's like the financial industry, or it's like any industry in the world, because we belong to an economy anyways. And building a career here is exactly the same as building a career in somewhere else. Because people think that in NGOs, you touch lives of people, you think you don't measure yourself, and you don't actually measure your impact. I've faced many challenges in this career, let me tell you. And I'm very thankful that actually what we do is learn from these people in order to help them in so many ways. Having a career as an NGO doesn't mean you have to be back in your desk and keeping away from people. What really makes you successful in this career is that your heart, your soul, your mind, your entire self must belong to these people. And that's a very serious decision. You can be in a bank behind a desk, which is fine. And you can be behind in so many other things. But in this place, you know, most economists, and I must put myself in that place as an economist, you can give a lot of lectures. You can stand up and give a lot of lectures. But that doesn't work if you don't put your hands on the society and the people. Otherwise, you're not proving anything whatsoever. And let me give you a great example. Esther Duflo, she's one of the best economists in the United States. She wrote an amazing book called Poor Economics. She is the best, and her book was written like in the 2008 or so. And she wanted to bring non-GOs into clear measurements. And she put all the economists into action. But we need to prove it as well. We cannot give arguments in just observing and giving thoughts. You don't do that. Over here, you have also need to prove what you do in order to give these models into the economy. Our model is called an economic model, and is the best thing when you measure, when you're good at it, but also if you understand why these people make those decisions, why these people make decisions on how to be poor every single day, and why they keep doing it. Because from our point of view, you know, when you actually draw the pyramid of development, people who are in the top must go to the bottom. That's why I put it upside down completely. We need to put poor people as first.
Coming up next, we have William Shaw. He is the president of Ultra Air. This was from episode 5 of How to Be the Difference. It's just about to be launched in Colombia, low-cost airline. Johanna, you can talk about this in a second, but I first want to mention it didn't make the cut of our podcast, but myself and William spoke for quite a while about nightclubs in Dublin when he came over. And he's been in Ireland a couple of times, and he was just a super fun, nice guy.
Yes, and this is not his first airline. This is actually the second airline that he starts. And yes, I think by the time the episode is released in a couple of days, then the airline is probably going to be operating. They have their planes ready, and this is super exciting.
Can you imagine? Can you actually
Yes.
imagine saying, so what is this? Like, I'm starting an airline, my second airline. Isn't that incredible? Anyway, let's jump into it. William Shaw. Can you take us on that journey from the moment when you went to uni, your early career in British Airways? And can you tell us how you grew up and how you chose a career in business?
Sometimes you don't choose a career chooses you, right? Everybody's life is different, and you know, taking a step back and looking at how I got here, it was very serendipitous, to be honest. I dropped out of college. I dropped out of uni to go backpack Europe, and of course, it did not make my dad happy at all. And he said, "Well, how are you going to pay for it?" And I said, "I don't know. I'll figure it out." I've always kind of done my own thing. And so I said, Dad, I'm going to go work for an airline. British Airways is hiring people at the airport in Mexico City. I'm Mexican, born and raised in Mexico. So I'm going to go work for British Airways, and they'll give me a free ticket to go backpack Europe. And my dad's like, fine, do whatever. So I did, and I started out as a check-in agent in 1993. I love the way like old people always use dates, and I'm starting to use a lot of dates now, right? Which I think is now categorizing me in the old people sector. But yes, 1993 is when I started with British Airways as a check-in agent, and I don't know, I've always loved people. And the airline industry is about people. Right? It's about taking people places. It's about treating them well, caring for their safety. You have a duty of care to the people that are traveling with you. And so I was enamored by the business, and from check-in agent, I went to ticketing supervisor, check-in supervisor, ramp handler, ramp supervisor, load and balance, account manager, groups, reservations, call center, and then again, dating myself, 1998, British Airways gave me the opportunity to become sales manager in Colombia, and 1998 was not the top of Colombia's history, right? It was not the easiest place to live in the world. There was a lot of conflict with the FARC and a lot of not so nice things happening in the country, but I freaking loved it. I still love it. I still love this country. Still believe in it very much so. And so I came to Colombia. They made me general manager 6 months after I arrived, then regional manager for the Andean region. So I looked after Venezuela as well. And Venezuela, I was invited to the inauguration of President Chavez, and we know where that ended up. And then British Airways offered me a role to become cargo director for the West Coast of the United States. And it was like, okay, I don't know the cargo business that well. Took me about a week to learn. It's not difficult at all. You move boxes and you put them on a plane, put them on the other side, get it to people, and that's it. And most of my customers were about strawberries and cherries and salmon and Alaskan king crab, and I know a lot about the perishable business and how that happens, and then I kind of got bored with my life. Where to? What's next? I was married at the time, and I told my ex-wife, and I want to emphasize ex-wife.
Noted.
Noted. My ex-wife, Scottish, by the way. My ex-wife, I want to do a master's degree, and I, to this day, her words resonate, within me. Well, why do you want to do a master's degree? I don't know. I want to advance my career. We're living in Silicon Valley, so maybe I can get a job with a big company. But big companies only hire people like from Stanford, Wharton, Harvard. You're not that smart. And I was okay. Thanks for believing in me. Really, that's awesome. No, really, you're not that smart. Took me a while, but I applied. I did the GMAT. I applied to Stanford Business School, got in to Stanford Business School, and got divorced about 3 months later. And then so I'm divorced, living in Silicon Valley, but working for cargo, not my happiest place. Didn't know where to go, what to do, broke. So I get there and I start talking to a guidance counselor at Stanford, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life. And he says, well, go talk to people, see what opportunities there are. You have no responsibilities. Nothing's tying you here. Where would you like to go? I said, I love Colombia. And he goes, well, go down there and start talking to people. And I came down here and I started talking to people, and I talked to a great friend of mine, Juan Emilio Posada. And he said, dude, well, let's research an airline. And I said, well, that sounds ambitious. And I started researching airlines at Stanford and figuring out what the business model that works is. And the business model that everybody is thriving for is low cost, right? Why pay more to get there? What you want to do is get there. You don't want to pay more because somebody gives you a soft drink, or somebody gives you a sandwich. You just want to get there, right? You want to get there. You want to go to Cartagena for the weekend. You want to go to Santa Marta. You might want to go to Cali to see your friends. And when I was in Colombia, a friend of mine said, "Oh, let's go to Cartagena." I said, "Great." And we looked at the price of tickets, and it was $800 to go to Cartagena for the weekend. And I said, "Wow, that's really expensive." So we'll drive there. And I don't know if you've ever driven from Bogota to Cartagena on a bank holiday weekend. It's long. It was almost 20 hours in the car with traffic. Colombia is geographically very diverse, but it has both mountain ranges intersecting right in Colombia. It's very mountainous. It's 2-lane highways. It's very difficult to get through. You have big buses, lorries as you call them, or trucks if you're American English, and it's just very, very, very tiring to get there by car. After that trip, we came back to San Francisco, and some friends said, "Oh, let's go to Las Vegas." I'm like, "Sure, I'm game. I'm single now. Let's go to Las Vegas."
Can you tell us anything about Las Vegas, or what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas?
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But the impressive part was my ticket cost me $50. I flew on a low-cost airline and it cost me $50. And I said, it cannot be that in Colombia it costs you $800 to go to Cartagena, and for the same distance in the same type of plane, right, that burns the same type of fuel, the same amount of fuel, I'm paying $50. There's got to be something here. So I started researching low-cost carriers and who were successful and who weren't successful, and did my entire thesis. I invited Juan Emilio along. I invited another friend, Fred Jacobson, and Gabriel Migowski, who was studying with me at Stanford, and we decided to go for it. We said, "Okay, let's go get the funding. Let's go do this." And it was very complex because not a lot of people believed in the possibility of implementing a low-cost carrier in Colombia, and more importantly, going up against an airline that was almost at that time almost 100 years old, right? It was a big company. It's been here forever, but we did. We were successful. When I left, it had 15% market share. It was growing. It hired over 2,000 people, created jobs. The market in Colombia grew from 12 million people traveling domestically to 27 million people traveling domestically, because as fares dropped, more people wanted to fly. If it costs you $800 to go to Cartagena, you might go once a year. If it costs you $400, you'll go twice. But if it costs you $50 to go to Cartagena, then suddenly you're saying, "Wow, I can go every other weekend," or I can, maybe really pay attention to that long distance relationship I have with that person in Cartagena. So, yeah, I mean, we really connected this country, and it's great. Sold it in 2016, and I went on to do some other stuff. An airline in Africa called Green Africa with a CEO and founder called Babawanda Alofabi. Helped out an airline in Argentina called Flybondi. Started a project which still hasn't taken off, which is called Flycana in the Dominican Republic. And then I went and helped out some friends in Mexico with a company called Interjet, which we sold to some new investors who were obliged to put in a lot of money in, but didn't, and that airline now has failed to restart.
And our next guest in the best of How to Be the Difference this year is Mauricio Toro. He's the CEO and co-founder of TechFit Digital Surgery. Mauricio Toro is going to share with us how he was the igniter, let's say, for building an open source ventilator, the very first open source ventilator from Colombia. But even Formula One engineers helped build this prototype, which is really amazing, super inspirational.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool. He actually said during that podcast that he started working on cars and he got into Formula 3 before getting into the tech side of stuff, which was absolutely amazing, an engineer. And I'm sure he was watching the end of the Grand Prix season the other day, which was fascinating. And congratulations to Max Verstappen.
Oh, I'm a bit sad because I'm a fan of Hamilton, but congratulations to the winner.
All right, let's jump into Mauricio Toro.
As the pandemic started, you came up with an idea of creating an open source ventilator. And I remember hearing from our friends in common in Colombia about this crazy idea, and then just a few weeks later becoming a reality. Please tell us, how was that process? How did you came up with the idea of building an open source ventilator, and why open source?
Okay, so this is crazy because it is the power of virality now. When the pandemic started getting bad, I had to travel to Colombia for a shareholders meeting of our company, and I had to cancel the trip. I started looking at data from everywhere. I had just been in a medical conference and people were talking about COVID, and we sat down. We said, okay, this is happening. This is going to be something that is going to hit the world hard. I think this pandemic is already out of control, and once you get to several countries with domestic transmission, there is basically nothing there. The only way out is through. So we're gonna need to survive this ordeal. How can we use our knowledge and our experience to do something about it? And the first thing, being in the medical device industry, the first thing that came to mind was, okay, this is a respiratory virus. It needs mechanical ventilation, and we don't have any mechanical ventilators available in the market. Even if we had infinite money, they would be impossible to buy. We're talking 1 year ago. So we said, okay, let's create a crisis ventilator. Let's do the best we can and create something for this pandemic. And I started sharing with people just openly. Actually, Formula One teams have helped and everything, because on LinkedIn, some Formula One engineers saw that I was posting about what we were trying to do in Colombia. And we launched an initiative, and it started gaining traction. And it first started with us trying to create a small prototype. Then we started finding support from universities, support from the Colombian innovation ecosystem. And in the end, we said, okay, this is our goal as a healthcare company is to profit from health, not from sickness. And we want to do what we can to make people better. And so understanding that when countries are in a state of crisis, trying to charge for the technologies you develop in crisis, for us, it hit us as a little bit of a moral dilemma of choosing profits over. So we decided to launch an open source initiative, and adding to that, we decided that we wanted to have several design initiatives. And this is and this comes from racing as well. In racing, you have 10 designs for a front wing or a rear wing. Then you test them in the computer in the CFD, and you narrow it down to 3. And then you take those 3 to the wind tunnel and you build 2. And then you go for a test on the car with those 2, and you choose the best one. But you always start with a plurality of ideas, because you want it to converge, and you want to mitigate the technological risk. So we knew the challenge we were undertaking had never been undertaken in the country. So we started turning it into 3 initiatives. And we decided we wanted the private sector to fund it. So we wanted to raise the money from the private sector and leave the government to acquire proven, to use their ventilation resources, not to buy experimental devices from an open source initiative in Colombia, but to use that money to buy certified, to try to find certified real world ventilators. And we were able to find private funding for the initiative. We created 3 prototypes. We have built about 350 ventilators to date, which are delivered in hospitals dealing with the pandemic peaks as they come and go across the country of Colombia. We got an emergency use approval, and the emergency use approval states that we are only used when the ventilators run out. Luckily, the government has done a good job, and that situation has been rare, but we have created a safety net for the Colombian health system for the ventilators. And making them open source, we have finished also clinical trials. We have documented them, submitted them to the regulatory authority, and the result from those trials is also going to be open source. And any startup in Colombia or anywhere in the world that wants to tackle the mechanical ventilation problem will be able to tackle it using at least a base technology that has been proven and tested in the clinical setting. And the other thing that we wanted, thinking beyond the pandemic, was to use this to dynamize the health technology ecosystem in Colombia, and particularly in Medellin. It goes beyond just being a good citizen. It's about leaving the cities or the village or the ecosystem, helping it grow, not only taking from it, but also contributing so your ecosystem grows. And we think with this, we are contributing to the Medellin ecosystem, get more visibility, and globally showcase some of the capabilities that we have, which starting in Medellin and now moving our company to the US and interacting with some of the great health leaders like Mayo Clinic and all the other companies we interact with. One thing that I have realized is we have a great amount of talent, a great amount of world-class talent that is not getting the visibility and the opportunities that they could get. So this initiative ended up being a very serendipitous thing, but in the end, it started pointing to our purpose, which is generating technology and growing the ecosystems where we participate. And all the partners, the universities, the companies that were a part of it, the researchers from the universities, the way we cross-fed off each other, and the 3 prototypes ended up completing the clinical trials. It's a great experience.
Next up, we have from episode 1, Claire Diaz-Ortiz. She was famously, I don't know, she's one of the first 50 employees of Twitter, and she gave the Pope his Twitter account in a famous ceremony. So yeah, it was absolutely great hearing from Claire Diaz-Ortiz. I didn't speak to her in this episode. That's a little behind the scenes stuff there, Johanna. You actually had the conversation. Now, I have met her before, but
yes,
you had the conversation.
Yes. I did this one on my own, which is sad. I love doing it with you, Paul. And she's a big mentor for me and for the Intent Group. So let's hear what she's got to say to us today.
How did you choose your career in journalism, publishing, and media?
Sure. So, I sort of fell into things. After graduating, I did a master's degree in anthropology and then ended up kind of traveling the world and starting to write, essentially. I was working on my first book when I fell into the experience of starting a nonprofit out in East Africa. And the reason that I was able to kind of get that nonprofit off the ground was really because of this blog I had started, this blog that had become kind of popular out of nowhere. And at the time, the people who started blogger.com, which was where many people were blogging in those days, and this was in the mid 2000s, that company, they had started Twitter. So they had incubated out a small project to Twitter. And so when they launched Twitter as sort of a side project, they asked if I wanted to, get on it and start tweeting. And I was living in Kenya with this nonprofit. I didn't have much else going on, and I was very eager to connect with people around the world. And so I started on Twitter and quickly became sort of an influential user. And from there ended up beginning to work at the company. And so I spent a number of years working at Twitter And it was while I was there that I published my first two books, I guess. And so that was sort of, I kind of fell in love with the process of writing, and I've just sort of been doing it ever since.
What was the moment when you felt that this career was for you?
It's interesting because I think for me, writing was something that I always knew would be a part of my life. I mean, I remember I was living in Argentina in 2005, and I had this dream of writing a book, and I had gone online to Google, and I was Googling how to write a book proposal, and following the instructions of what it told me to do, because this was always sort of something I wanted to do. But I think for me, the big thing was figuring out a way to make it work within the context of a larger career. Because although I love writing, I'm not a novelist. I'm not the type of writer that is content just being alone a lot. And so I knew I needed to combine it with some type of career in business, which is essentially what I ended up doing.
And what would you say, what does someone need to succeed in journalism, publishing, and media?
Well, I think these days what one needs to succeed is a little bit different than what it used to be. I think, 20 years ago, learning to be a good writer by reading a lot and then writing a lot and writing some more was enough. I think these days, though, some of the career of being in journalism and in writing words is actually about also connecting with people online. So for me, I have been lucky because social networking and social media has been a part of my work at the same time. But I would say that, most writers these days who want to be able to make a living doing it have to have some kind of working understanding and working use of, at least one social media platform, say.
And what are some of the common myths or misconceptions about journalism, publishing, and media?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest misconception is probably, comes from the history of the discipline, which is simply that, 30 years ago, it was enough to write something wonderful and have someone else publish it. These days, so much of the work of being in writing and having a story to tell is about trying to get the eyeballs on it and make sure that people actually read your content. And so that's why so many people who care about writing these days have to spend time learning some of the basic tools like running an email newsletter or, being an active participant on, as I say, one social media platform, not necessarily all of them. So I think that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes for writers who would like to be, just content to kind of sit in their ivory tower and type away at their novel. You have to be more social in this world, unfortunately, with writing these days.
And that's it from part one of our Christmas special. 6 episodes, or 6 parts to this one, and 6 parts. It is a bumper special, isn't it, Johanna? There's a lot going on.
Yes, it's a lot going on. And so I guess we'll hear in 2 weeks. But before that, what are your Christmas plans, Paul?
Just meet the family, give presents, etc. Yeah, all the usual kind of stuff. Potentially, have a couple of drinks on Christmas Day and take it easy. What about yourself?
Yes. Family, great food. I'm planning on gaining 2 or 3 kilos, and I don't care. And yes, just spending time with the family and being grateful for that. I
forgot about that. All the chocolate that you get, you just like nonstop eating.
Exactly. But January is the time to start exercising again. And losing all the pounds.
Every January, it's a new start. But that's it. Have a fantastic Christmas. Thanks a million, Johanna, and thanks a million to everybody who listened as well.
Yes, thank you all. And as a reminder, you can find us in How to Be the Difference at theinternetgroup.com or at the Intern Group. And have a happy holidays, everyone.